Hi, how you doing, everybody? You just watched the first part of the November 3rd homework assignment for pre-algebra. What I'm going to do now is start with number 4 when we have fractions. 1/2 minus x equals 7/2. Okay, so we find our equal sign, find the variable, and I look for if there's a plus or a minus in between, which there is. So that means I'm going to do an addition or subtraction step. And I know I want to get rid of that, and I look to the left of the half, and I see nothing, which means it's positive. And now I do the inverse, which is subtract. So I'm going to subtract 1/2 from both sides. So now these are gone, and I bring down my negative x equals, and what I do is I write my top fraction first, then my bottom fraction, and I make sure that I have the correct signs for each fraction. So positive 7/2, then minus 1/2, and I get this. And now it's great that I have a common denominator. Now I just have to worry about what's 7 minus 1, 6. So I get 6/2 equals negative x. And then from there, I try and simplify my fraction, which in this case it's great that 6/2 is just 3. So I get negative x equals 3. And then I do my change rule because I have negative x. So change that sign, and I get x equals negative 3. Okay, what if I had 1/2 minus x equals 7/4, a different denominator? I do the same exact thing. Go on my side where the x is, my left-hand side. I know there's a plus or a minus in between. That means I'm going to do an adding or subtracting step. I look to the left of the half. It's positive. Subtract 1/2, subtract 1/2. It's gone. I bring down my negative x equals. And now I do my top fraction minus my bottom fraction, or this positive fraction and a negative fraction, and make sure I keep the signs with them. And now I don't have something that's great. I have something that, I have to do more work for. It's not just a simple one-step equation. I got to get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by what I need in order to get a denominator of 4. 2 times 2 is 4. So that's why I got to do the same thing to the numerator. Whatever you do to the denominator, you're going to do to the numerator as well. Okay. So now I have 7/4 minus 2/4. And now I still have that equal to negative x. And then what's 7 minus 2? 5. So I'm going to go down a little bit so you can see the rest. And I have negative x equals 5/4. And even though it's a fraction, that's okay, an improper fraction. So you're allowed to leave it like this and just say change, and finally x equals negative 5/4. I could have left my answer as negative 5/4 or negative 1 1/4, or I could have wrote it as a decimal negative 1.25, but I don't like to have decimals in my answer unless I had decimals in my original problem. But all 3 of these forms are acceptable. Okay, let me put this back up. Okay, number 6. 1/2 x equals 3/4. And this is finally the first equation that we're going to be dealing with that has multiplication where the x is. There's no plus or minus in between where the x is. Now that finally means that we are multiplying with the variable. So the opposite of that is to divide. Now there's 2 different ways you can go about this. I could choose to divide, which is the inverse, choose to divide by 1/2, and then I can show my work this way, or I like to use what's called whoops, or I like to do what's called the pickup method. So this pickup method means to, wherever the number is that you're multiplying times the fraction, whatever that number is, you pick it up and you bring it over to the other side, and what you're going to do is, whenever it changes or goes through the equal sign, you have to flip the fraction. And if we were multiplying over here, we're still going to multiply over here. Flipping the fraction goes and takes care of that division to multiplication step. So you're allowed to take this, flip it over here, or take the reciprocal. So it's going to be 2 over 1, and now that fraction is gone, and you're left with just x on the left-hand side. And now you just have to worry about, do I know my multiplication of fraction rules? When you're multiplying, you do not need a common denominator. You just have to try to simplify. And you're allowed to take any one numerator with any one denominator and find what they are both divisible by and divide each one by that. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then we're just going to multiply straight across. So then 3 times 1 is 3, and 2 times 1 is 2. And I get positive 3 over 2. And this is our answer. I can also write it as 1.5 or 1.5. I think that this one is the best, this one's the next, because it requires an extra step. And this one, no decimals. There weren't any decimals in the original problem. Now that was one with fractions. Let's do one that's easier, but still using that same step. What if we had -6 equals 3x? Now this is a lot nicer. It doesn't have many fractions. It's a little bit easier to work with. And I look at my equal sign, find where my x is, and I say, okay, this is my side that I should be working on. And I cover up this, and I say, oh, there's no plus or minus in between a 3 and the x. That means that there's multiplication. And what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. Well, here I don't have to use the pickup method. I can just say, well, the opposite is division. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. 3's cancel here. X equals -6 over 3. And then that's nice that it reduces to an integer. So I get -2 equals x. So whenever I have x times an integer, a whole number, it's going to be a little bit easier. I can show my work this way. But when I have a fraction, it's a little bit easier, I think, to use what's called the pickup method, where you bring it on the other side, but really you're doing the same thing. That's the answer for that one. 8. -3/5 equals 1/3 x. Okay, here it would be maybe a little bit long-winded if I were to show divide by 1/3, divide by 1/3, and then go from there. I'd rather try to write a little bit simpler. So even though I know that there's multiplication here, because there's no plus or minus, and I know that I'm going to divide, I can use that simpler method where I call it the pickup method, and I bring it on the other side. But I have to remember to take the reciprocal. So I take this fraction, and I bring it on the other side, but don't forget to flip it. So now I have 3 over 1, that number, I took the reciprocal, brought it on the other side, times this number, -3 over 5, equals x. And now I just got to try and simplify this side. So there's nothing to simplify. The 3 and the 1 I can't simplify. The 3 and the 5 I can't simplify. The 3 and the 5, the 3 and the 1, can't simplify anything. I can't cross out these 3's because they're both in the numerator. I need 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. So I can't do anything. So that means just multiply straight across. 3 times -3 is -9. 1 times 5 is 5. I gotta go down a little bit because you can't see. and then that equals x. So I can write my answer this way, or I can say that this is negative 1 4/5. And again, no decimals. Either one of these are perfectly fine. Okay, let's do two more real quick, 9 and 10, and then I got a bunch of homework for you. Okay, number 9, negative 6 equals negative 4x. Oh, good, a little bit easier. No fractions. I look on the side where my x is, no plus or minus in between. That means there's multiplication, and now I know to divide. So if I'm going to divide, and it's an integer, I'm not going to use the pickup method. I could if I want to. I can flip it on the other side, but it's a little bit easier now to write it this way. So I divide by that number, and then whatever the sign is, I always make sure I divide by that same sign. And now I have x equals, what is negative 6 divided by negative 4? Well, any negative divided by any negative is positive. And then 6 divided by 4, it's a fraction. Just try to reduce your fraction. What are they both divisible by? Well, they're both divisible by 2, so I'm going to divide each one by 2. So I get positive 3 over 2. So x equals positive 3 over 2, or 1.5, or 1.5. Okay, last one. Number 10, 18x equals negative, 18x equals negative 36. All right, this is going to be 10a, and then I also have a quick 10b. So for this one, again, I look on the side where the variable is. In the middle, there's no sign. That means multiplication, inverse operation, division. So I'm going to divide by 18, divide by 18, get rid of this, and I finally get x equals, now what is negative 36 divided by 18? That works out to be a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and it's just 2. And I'm done. But what if I had the x on the other side? 18 equals negative 36x. Now, the x is on this side. I still got multiplication here. The inverse operation is division, and if I divide by negative 36, the answer is not negative 2. I have to, again, reduce that fraction, divide by, I can divide by 2, I can divide by 9, but even more, I divide by that 18, and I get 1 over 2, and a positive divided by a negative is a negative, and the answer is negative 1/2 instead of negative 2. All right, so that's the video. What I'm going to do is put another video on, or make another video, a third video for November 3rd, and it's going to be what your homework is. So work on the homework assignment. It's going to consist of 5 questions. Do the best you can. I will be checking this assignment. I will be looking for the work. You can call each other up and help each other for this assignment, and then we're going to work on a bunch of equations tomorrow in class.